Thank you for joining today's all-of-nation effort to beat COVID-19, What's Happening in Northern New Jersey. I'm Frank Cullen, and I'm with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and we're proud to partner with the Morris County Chamber of Commerce for today's event. Without the hard work and support from our Morris County Chamber partners, today's event simply would not have been possible. So we want to thank them for all their hard work. We're especially pleased to have as our special guest, Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, and we appreciate the time the Congresswoman has taken from her busy schedule to participate in today's important discussion. I also want to thank our other speakers who will provide insights on the many clinical trials and research projects that will lead to a vaccine and more effective treatments for COVID-19. The Chamber has long supported the need for a strong domestic intellectual property system to encourage innovation, drive economic growth, and create jobs. As a matter of fact, when we created the Global Innovation Policy Center at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we brought together all industry sectors that are working in the IP space. And according to the Department of Commerce, those industries support 45 million jobs, over 38% of our GDP, and well over half of our trade. So they're making a significant contribution across the nation. And it's important to know that in New Jersey, innovation and creativity are the driving force behind a lot of companies and a lot of jobs. So today, we're here to talk about the COVID-19 crisis. The Chamber recently launched its Discover and Deliver campaign to highlight the incredible work being done across the nation to address the COVID crisis. The Discover and Deliver campaign includes an interactive map that pinpoints the many clinical trials and research projects taking place in communities around the country. And we encourage you to go to the main U.S. Chamber of Commerce website to view this interactive map that shows just how comprehensive the industry and research sector's response has been to this crisis. And here are some of the numbers, and they're very impressive. There are currently over 650 clinical trials taking place across the country. They're taking place in all 50 states. Of those, 109 are taking place right here in New Jersey, with 17 in the 11th Congressional District. Those are really impressive numbers. And 1/3 of these trials are in the final stage of clinical development. And that means we're finding our way to new treatments and new vaccines. Now, before introducing our next speaker, I want to again extend our appreciation to Congresswoman Sherrill for her service to the people of her district and our entire nation, especially during this crisis. Congress has taken decisive action to respond to this pandemic, and we deeply appreciate your leadership and all your hard work. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Meghan Hunscher, President and CEO of the Morris County Chamber and Morris County Economic Development Corporation. Meghan has been an effective leader for the business community in Morris County, and we are deeply grateful to her for all her hard work and leadership. Meghan, thank you again for the fantastic job you and your team have done with today's event. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for your kind words. Welcome, everyone. Today, we are so pleased to have you join us. Firstly, I would like to thank the U.S. Chamber for highlighting and celebrating all the innovation that is occurring in our country right now, and for including Northern New Jersey as well. And for our team, our Chamber team, and your team, Frank, for helping to put this together today. This is so vital and so important to get the word out about all the good things that our pharmaceutical industry and life science and healthcare industry are doing at this challenging time. I would like to thank Representative Sherrill as well for being with us today, making time out of her busy schedule, and for all that she has done for the district and the state of New Jersey, and of course our country, as well as serving in our military. So firstly, for those of you who are not in New Jersey currently, I'd like to welcome you to Morris County. We are a Forbes Top 10 county for many, many reasons. A wonderful place to live, raise your family, recreate, and of course, locate and grow your business. We have over $50 billion gross regional product. Much of that is in the life science and healthcare space, employing professional and technical and scientific talent, which of course creates many economic benefits beyond that. So at the Morris County Chamber and EDC, we certainly keep track of that data, and we're always glad to share it with you. But we do celebrate that as an integral part of our economy. So again, thank you for joining us today at the Morris County Chamber. We continue to connect, convene, facilitate, educate, and advocate. We continue our mission, of course, now virtually, and our mission is your success. So again, we thank you for being with us. And of course, we thank our members, Bayer and Ferring and Atlantic Health, Morristown Medical Center, for being with us today as panelists. Atlantic Health is the #1 hospital in New Jersey. It's a top 10 hospital in the United States. So we are certainly fortunate to have tremendous healthcare here right in our backyard, as well as all of the clinical trials that they're doing. With crisis, there presents opportunity. And this opportunity is to raise the profile of these industries, all the good that they're doing, all the innovation that they're developing right now between therapies and vaccines. And so we're so fortunate to have them in our country. And we know science knows no jurisdictional boundaries. So we're fortunate to have companies from all over the world who are also located in New Jersey. Novartis, for example, included, who could not be with us today, but we're really fortunate to have them in the district, in the county, and excuse me. Finally, I would just like to wish all of you a very relaxing Labor Day weekend, and also acknowledge the hard work of our educators and our parents, our laborers who are working tirelessly every day during this challenging time to educate our children, who are the next generation of innovators, the next generation of scientists, doctors, managers, people who will continue to continue with the mantle and move us forward as a country and as a civilization, quite frankly. So I'd just like to acknowledge them today, and the fact that New Jersey schools have been ranked again #1 in the country. So here's to our schools, our educators, our parents, all of you who are mentoring, those who are seeking careers in these industries. So thank you very much. And now I turn it over to Frank to introduce our first, I turn it over to Ray Kerins, Senior Vice President, Head of Corporate Affairs for Bayer, who will introduce the Congresswoman. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate the time here. So guys, my day job is at Bayer. I run corporate affairs. I also am the site lead for all of our New Jersey sites, which we have over 3,000 employees in Morris County in 2 different sites. I'm also chairman of the Global Innovation Policy Center at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and an executive committee member of the U.S. Chamber. So this is a very exciting conversation for us here today. It is absolutely my honor to introduce the Congresswoman. For those of you who may or may not know, Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill happens to be lead the 11th Congressional District of New Jersey, but you may also know that she is a veteran. And I remember very clearly her incredible advertisements, that seeing her flying the helicopter and thinking, I'd like to meet her someday. She's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, spent 10 years in active duty in the United States Navy, flying missions throughout Europe and the Middle East as a Sea King helicopter pilot. The Congresswoman also served as a Russian policy officer and worked on the implementation of our nuclear treaty obligations and oversaw the relationship between the U.S. Navy and the Russian Federation Navy. After leaving the Navy, she earned a law degree and eventually joined the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey. The Congresswoman holds a bachelor's degree from the United States Naval Academy, a master's degree in global history from the London School of Economics, and a political science and law degree from Georgetown University. The Congresswoman serves as a freshman whip for the New Democratic Coalition and sits on the House Armed Services Committee and the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. She's a chairwoman of the Environment Subcommittee for Science, Space, and Technology. You know, we mentioned this a moment ago, but New Jersey has one of the most vibrant life science industries in the country and is often called the medicine chest of the world. And Bayer is proud to call New Jersey our North American headquarters for our pharmaceutical and consumer health divisions. The work of the biopharmaceutical industry has never been more important. I think we can all agree with this, given how we are now banding together as an industry to find those scientific advances to help find effective treatments and vaccines to battle this COVID-19 global pandemic. For that investment R&D to continue, it is critical to have effective policies, particularly in the environment of intellectual property. And for that reason, again, I want to say that I'm honored, absolutely honored, to introduce Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill for all that she has done representing the life science industry here in New Jersey. And again, as Frank indicated, for her service, not just to New Jersey, not just to our industry, but most importantly, to our country. Congresswoman, over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Ray. That was such a kind and nice introduction. I really appreciate it. I know we're going to hear more from Bear on the research you're doing around the combination therapies for COVID-19 and other contributions you are making to the fight against coronavirus, but I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you too for being a thought partner with me and how we can continue to grow the ecosphere in North Jersey and keep it the medicine best of the world. So I really appreciate all Bear's done. Thank you also to Frank and to Meghan for starting us off. I really love the series that the U.S. Chamber is hosting across the country, and all of nation effort to beat COVID. It, to me, really captures the spirit of this moment and our country perfectly. There's no doubt that we're all in this together with a common mission. And I'm so proud of the thousands of ways that New Jerseyans have demonstrated over the last several months what it means to serve others and care for each other. The ways that I've seen our local, county, and state officials work together regardless of party to serve our communities so we can get through this crisis together and proudly remain Jersey strong. It's been incredibly heartening. And our chambers in the district have been such an important part of these community partnerships. I can't emphasize enough how much I always rely on our local chambers, but especially now at this crisis moment when our business communities have been hit so hard. I've participated in events with the Sussex, North Essex, West Orange, Livingston, and Nutley chambers, and their insight has made me a better advocate in Washington. And of course, I partner regularly with the Morris Chamber, given how much of my district is in Morris County. Throughout the pandemic, Meghan and I have participated in each other's town halls multiple times to make sure our residents and small businesses are getting the information that they need. I was so impressed with the work the Morris Chamber did with Senator Bucco on their economic reopening and recovery task force to develop a report and business industry risk scorecard. I pushed it out on the business resources section of my own website. They helped disseminate my small business surveys that I used to advocate for changes to the PPP. And I even did an interview with Mike Stanzilis when the Chamber launched its NCTV YouTube channel, complete with my kids running around in the end. Luckily, Mike handled it like a pro, having like making the challenges for parents working from home completely relatable. But I think it says a lot about the importance of medical innovation to this area of North Jersey. At the 2020 chairwoman of the Morris County Chamber is Tricia O'Keefe, the president of Morristown Medical Center, home to many of the clinical trials that you will be discussing today on the panel with their chief medical officer. Their COVID research team is doing amazing work, thanks in large part to their ability to quickly pivot their research resources already in place. I'm so proud of the innovation happening here in my district around COVID. As you mentioned, 17 clinical trials here when most other congressional districts only have a few, but I'm not surprised. Northern New Jersey has long been a center of innovation. We have the birthplace of the telegraph right here in Morris County and historic Speedwell, and Bell Labs Murray Hill headquarters were located just outside my district in New Providence. This is just who we are. It's in our DNA. I take my role in helping to continue to develop and strengthen the ecosystem that makes this innovation thrive very seriously. One of my favorite activities pre-COVID was getting around the district in person to see firsthand the innovative work being done. Companies like Modern Meadows and Nutley, where they are growing incredible bioleather in their labs. The Novartis facility in Morris Plains, where I watched them unload a patient's T cells to be re-engineered to fight leukemia. The Breakthrough Treatment Center at Atlantic Health doing cutting-edge work with T cells. Leo Pharma in Madison, where I participated in an employee town hall to learn more about their work to fight rare skin diseases. And Oncos in Parsippany, where they create digital surgical plans and 3D print replacement sections of bone to replace tumors. What used to involve taking off most of your leg now involves just cutting through specific tumors and 3D printing the replacement. These are just a few examples. So of course, when COVID hit, we were going to be a leader in North Jersey in the 11th district in this fight. I spoke with our major medical systems every day at the height of the pandemic, and it was tough for them on the front lines. So we're incredibly grateful for their work. And the way they have turned this experience into an opportunity to help the entire country and the nation through cutting edge research is really incredible to me. And I look forward to talking about this more with you, Frank, in the Q&A. So thank you so much for hosting this today. This is really just a wonderful event. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you so much for those insightful comments. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about all the exciting things that are happening right in the backyard in the 11th District. You know, you have an incredible amount of innovation occurring in New Jersey, and particularly in your district. And you did touch a bit on, you know, why that's so important, you know, and the kind of work that's being done. But beyond getting us to a vaccine or new treatments, you know, there are also economic benefits, and there are benefits just in terms of contributions to science more broadly. Can you expand on that just a little bit in terms of maybe some of the economic value and some of the other benefits that go with this beyond getting us to perhaps a vaccine or additional treatments?
Well, certainly. To start, we were an early hotspot for COVID. I wish that hadn't been the case, but our providers had a crash course in dealing with coronavirus, and I, again, couldn't be more proud of how they responded. And having these clinical trials in my district makes sense because it builds off our experience with COVID, as well as the tremendous resources we have here. We have been building, we didn't realize it would be this moment, but we've actually been building for this moment for some time. Hackensack Meridian has been able to use the expanded capacity that they've been working towards as a teaching hospital to participate in these trials. We wanted to move into more clinical trials, and now this is providing that opportunity. St. Barnabas in Livingston, which is home to many of the clinical trials as well, treated more patients with convalescent plasma than any other hospital in New Jersey as part of a research trial. As they've said to me, without investments in these clinical trials and research, their medical care for COVID patients would have remained stagnant. So running the cutting edge clinical trials really represents the best of our industry. Not only are we incredibly proud in New Jersey of what's going on here, but it also expands the scope of scientific innovation and improves access to latest innovation treatments and therapies. It creates good jobs here in New Jersey, keeps life sciences at the center of New Jersey's history of innovation and discovery. It also leverages off the research resources we already have in place. So it makes sense from an efficiency point of view. And there's a reason, as we've said several times, there's a reason they call New Jersey the medicine chest for the world. Because the work that's done here provides much needed hope as we deal with the mental health, and economic impacts of this pandemic. So all of the stuff we've been building for, now we can make a reality. And economically, that's going to continue to grow this ecosystem. Certainly, we want to make sure that all the investment we've put into our hospital systems and our medical systems is now flourishing, so we can keep the jobs here. We can use the great schools and secondary schools we have here to get people into the industry and really grow the economy here in North Jersey.
Well, thank you again for that. You know, obviously the Chamber looks at these issues in many different aspects, but we certainly can't ignore that economic contribution. It's significant, and it's also important to remember that, you know, some of these jobs typically pay much better than the national average. So it really helps in terms of raising the, you know, quality of life for people by having good paying jobs and having jobs that really do contribute to society. You know, it's really interesting. You touched on there's significant impact to your district and to the people of New Jersey from the COVID crisis. And it's really staggering that the US has surpassed over 6 million confirmed cases just recently. And sometimes, you know, we forget that there are individual people behind that large number, and their lives and the lives of their families, friends, and colleagues have been significantly disrupted by COVID-19. You're one of only a handful of members of Congress whose life was directly impacted by COVID-19, with your husband testing positive early on in the pandemic. How did your personal experience with COVID-19 impact your response as a policymaker to this crisis?
Well, as you mentioned, my husband had the coronavirus really early on, late February, early March, and it really highlighted for me how little we knew about this. For those of us who were engaged in this very early on, if you recall, the questions that the doctor would ask were, do you have a dry cough? Do you have a fever? And have you been to China? And my husband had flu-like symptoms, but didn't have a fever, and he had been to Europe. We now know, of course, that's where most of our cases came from, the East Coast, but at the time we knew so little. So that drive to get more information quickly and push out the information as quickly as possible was critically important to me. Being on the phone every morning with our hospital systems provided that key linkage, not only for me, but for the other hospital systems, as they could tell each other what they were seeing on the ground. And in the 11th district, we have some of the key hospital systems in all of Jersey that have different branches throughout the state. So we understood what was going on across the state, not just in the 11th district. It also gave me a clear sense of what we needed, making sure we had the ventilators we needed, the PPE gear we needed, and we didn't have enough. So that's what led me to advocate so strongly for a federal response to this. And I think that's what we really need to continue to focus on. If you look at a heat map of the country, you see how the Northeast has dealt with coronavirus and has really gotten our caseload significantly lower than it was. And at the height of ours was about mid-April. We've driven down those numbers. We're trying hard and keeping those numbers down so now we can open restaurants and businesses, and we're going to keep moving forward on that. But I think what that shows is that we need a federal response, because despite the fact that here in the Northeast we are driving the cases down, we've seen spikes, unfortunately, across the country. So we need to have a whole of government approach to addressing this public health crisis, because until we get the public health crisis under control, it's really hard to attack the economic crisis we're having in the most productive way.
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. And, you know, first of all, we hope your husband's doing well, and please extend our very best wishes to him, and he's had no lingering impacts. You know, we understand that it's different for everyone, but, you know, we're so glad to hear that he's doing better. So, you know, again, best wishes on that. You know, you touched on something that I think is really interesting. You know, we've certainly seen a call for a broader federal response and a whole of government approach, and we do really feel that there has been a whole of industry approach to this. And as we title these events, we really need the all of nation approach, you know, but it is interesting to me that we're seeing an unprecedented level of cooperation amongst industry and companies and research facilities. There are companies that are willing to partner. There are companies that are willing to share production facilities, distribution chains. So there's a whole slew of collaborations that are happening that are really critical. And, you know, that's really reflected in something we talked about a few moments before, which is just how vibrant the life sciences industries are in New Jersey, truly one of the country's most vibrant. And that really is underpinned, in our belief, by our innovation ecosystem and a strong IP system. So having the ability to allow industry to really contribute to the foundational research that's done at so many great institutions across the country, you know, for every dollar that's spent in the public sector and the academic sector, anywhere from $10 to $100 may be spent by the private sector. So it's huge investments that really are required, but seeing these unprecedented levels of cooperation are terrific. So we do know that in New Jersey, there's over 1.5 million jobs across the state and over 15.8 billion in research and development occurring. And during this global pandemic, it's really become more important than ever to create and sustain that type of a regulatory environment which will support continued investment in clinical research and the type of, you know, foundational science that's necessary to help drive us to a cure. So can you tell us, in your opinion, the ways that you think effective innovation policy, including intellectual property protections, has helped support research and development of the COVID-19 treatments in your district and amongst your companies?
Sure, I think that's a great question, because IP protection is one of the fundamental reasons that we have as much innovation as we do. If our pharmaceutical companies don't feel as though their research and products will be protected, they might not be able to take the risks they do investing in new research. We've seen some really good examples of this, including Hackensack Meridian Health Center for Discovery and Innovation, CDI, research on convalescent plasma therapy and their collaboration with Merck on COVID-19 treatments. We've also seen two pharmaceutical companies, Sanofi and GSK, team up to develop a potential vaccine, with Sanofi contributing its proprietary antigen and GSK contributing its adjuvant technology. This collaboration wouldn't exist without robust IP protections, which allow both the companies to work together without fear. It's crucial, not just for the development of new therapeutics and vaccines, but also for the pre-existing ones that we are using now or building upon, like remdesivir or more recently steroids. We must also keep our IP safe from foreign bad actors who are seeking to acquire it through illicit means. And I sit on the House Armed Services Committee, so I can tell you how critical it is to protect our IP from foreign countries and keep our quantitative and qualitative edge.
Well, thank you for that as well. And you touched on a topic I just want to follow up on, because during one of your recent Monday with Mikie virtual meetings, you hosted a conversation with state government officials, local chambers, and medical experts. This is not your first rodeo. You do this kind of thing all the time, of bringing people together and really providing great service and information to your constituents. So A, we want to thank you for taking the time to convene those type of meetings, and B, certainly, again, thank you for participating in today's meeting. And in the past 5 months, as we've talked about, one of the bright spots has really been this unprecedented level of cooperation and collaboration we've talked about between government, innovative companies, universities, hospitals, and they're rapidly identifying new treatments for coronavirus patients and trying to really help deal with things while we wait for a vaccine more effectively. So again, can you just maybe elaborate a little bit on why those public-private partnerships specifically are so important, and how have you seen some of those partnerships play out in New Jersey and even in your own district?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for commenting on the combination of panelists at my town hall. I think it was so critical, although it was funny when you said, we want to thank you for doing those town halls. What came through my mind was a statement that an old gruff petty officer of mine would always say. He'd say, "Don't thank me, it's my job." So I do appreciate it, but certainly I think it's so incredibly important to get information out to my constituents. And I did a series of telephone town halls and a few what we call virtual Mondays with Mikies throughout the summer. And I've been so grateful for the diverse set of resources that we have available in the district to provide information and answer constituent questions at this really tough time. We've had medical professionals focused on infectious diseases, mental health, and most recently a pediatrician talk about getting kids back to school, which I have 4 school-age children, and they're going back to school virtually September 10th. So I found his comments really helpful. And we also have all of the business resources. Meghan from the Morris Chamber has been a panelist multiple times, as well as experts from the SBA and NJEDA. Last week on a Monday with Mikie, we focused on resources for veterans, and we had a panelist from the Veterans Business Outreach Center, or VBOC, who had great advice, and we talked about getting a mentorship program started for veteran entrepreneurs. We had NJBIO on the telephone town hall to talk about innovation and research around COVID in New Jersey, along with the Dean of the Public Health School at Rutgers, which was just fantastic. And then I just reciprocated and then joined a town hall that NJBIO hosted. These partnerships and constant conversations are invaluable and help me be a better advocate for New Jersey and the district. But back to the main point of it, public-private partnerships have really been key to expanding innovation and addressing critical needs in New Jersey 11 for a long time. Beyond COVID, that term immediately makes me think about the innovative research work going on at Picatinny Arsenal and the partnerships that are so critical there. As everyone here at the Morris County Chamber knows, Picatinny is the largest employer here in the district, and I'm so proud of the partnership between the Arsenal and our community, which is enabled by so many of our innovative companies. Picatinny is leading the military in innovation and modernization, and it's largely through partnerships between the engineers at the Arsenal and the cutting-edge New Jersey companies that we have here in the district. And in the pandemic, we have seen these partnerships grow even between the unlikeliest of players, as you mentioned earlier. I want to give you a few examples of partnerships that have led to really great innovations in the fight for COVID-19 here in North Jersey. Becton Dickinson, or BD, is working with the US government on a $42 million investment to expand manufacturing capacity for syringes and needles to support vaccination efforts against COVID-19. The company will provide up to 250 million units, and so the first doses of the vaccine are likely to be administered using BD needles and syringes. BD is also working with the US government to scale manufacturing capabilities for its rapid diagnostic test. In April, Rutgers, RUCDR Infinite Biologics received the first FDA emergency use authorization, enabling the use of saliva tests to detect the presence of SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. And that is something that all of New Jersey is particularly proud of. In fact, I will tell you, because of the travel I do for work, going back and forth to Washington and the outbreaks and stuff, I've gotten a couple coronavirus tests. I have only gotten the saliva test here in New Jersey. When I'm down in the House of Representatives, I got a test at one point and have had the up the nose type test, and I can tell you the Rutgers test is 100 times better. Since then, a revised EUA for an at-home saliva sample collection has also been approved. Rutgers is working closely with the NJ Department of Health as well as the Department of Corrections to make these tests available. Conduent is a company headquartered in Florham Park who's partnered with departments of health across the country to support contact tracing and outbreak investigation. Conduent developed a HIPAA-compliant, cloud-based disease surveillance and outbreak management solution called Maven that streamlines contact tracing and securely tracks, traces, manages, and reports on cases of COVID-19. The system was originally built to track 90 different health conditions, and when COVID-19 emerged early this year, the company quickly added a CDC-compliant module to the Maven system to support departments of health in tracking and responding to the disease. Access Bio is a biotech company with longstanding partnerships with the Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, the Global Fund, and other leading global health and other leading organizations. Access Bio's mission is to make high-quality, accessible, and affordable diagnostic tests for the prevention and early diagnosis of infectious diseases. We have Viscarta, a biotech company that's collaborating with Albert Einstein College of Medicine to develop a therapeutic specifically designed to reduce the risk of developing the extreme manifestations of COVID-19. And an international example with a local tie, Population Health Research Institute in Bexar, Canada, are partnering on a major clinical research program aimed at identifying potential treatments for COVID-19. Two studies are going to evaluate the safety and efficacy of different combination therapies, including Bayer's chloroquine and interferon beta-1b. Bayer is actively participating in several global coalitions supporting research for drugs and treatment strategies against COVID. And finally, I just want to highlight the Ovadia Corporation, a longtime manufacturer of jewelry displays headquartered in Little Falls, who partnered with the medical community to retool their manufacturing to produce face shields for our healthcare workers. I have to tell you that the public-private partnerships throughout the 11th district have been amazing. And it's something that I'd really like to push our legislation and 2 amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act that could strengthen these public-private partnerships. They'll fund investments into the Manufacturing Extension Program, MEP, to create a national supply chain database. The database will enable NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, in conjunction with MEP, to understand where manufacturers can retool production to meet urgent needs such as production of supplies, medical devices, PPE gear, etc. And NJ MEP will integrate into this national database. The legislation also requires Manufacturing USA institutes to contract with MEPs in each state to provide defense and industrial base related outreach, technical assistance, workforce development, and technology transfer assistance to small and medium-sized manufacturers. I know this was an incredibly long answer, but I thought that it was important to point out our fantastic companies here in New Jersey. But what you'll also probably heard as I was talking about all our great companies is that they're not just working for the company, they're working for our community and our country at large to really get past coronavirus. So they are such a key and integral part, not just of our business community, but our community at large. And we're so proud to have these great companies here in the 11th.
Well, Congresswoman, it's really a shame that there's not a good example of public-private partnership going on back home. So I think you've certainly shown just the scope of work in a brief answer to that question that I think is very impressive and highlights just how important the work going on in your district and in all of New Jersey is. You know, we could talk for hours about this issue. We haven't touched at all on one issue raised, which is concerns about supply chain and delivery. We haven't talked at all about the impact of potential counterfeiting and other types of IP crime that are really proliferating during this crisis, you know, whether it's our healthcare workers being threatened with the counterfeit PPE, or people at home getting counterfeit products, or having malware installed on their computers if they're subject to streaming crime. So we look at how people are connecting for meetings such as this. It's the innovation, American innovation, that's allowing us to have virtual meetings, work from home, have remote learning, have entertainment that's keeping us sane. So our innovative and creative industries have really stepped up during this crisis to get us through and allow us all to have at least some degree of connectivity and some degree of productivity as well. And we think it's very exciting to see just how productive things are in New Jersey's 11th district. And we want to certainly thank you for your leadership, for your insights. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you also for what you're doing to try to make sure that people are helped out economically during this crisis. And there are ways that Congress is acting to try to ensure that people who have economic hardship or other issues are being taken care of. So I want to thank you for your attention to those issues, your attention to certainly the larger economic concerns that are facing our nation. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. And we thank you so much for all your really incredible insights and leadership. And just thank you again for taking time to be with us today. You're welcome to hang around and perhaps comment on the panel's discussion, but I know how busy your schedule is. And if we're not able to see you at the end of the program, again, thank you so much. And stay safe, enjoy the holiday weekend. And we so appreciate your participation today.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Unfortunately, we have kind of scheduled back to back. Some things have cropped up, but I will say I really appreciate you raising it. We've contacted FEMA. I've written a letter specifically based on counterfeit PPE, which has been so dangerous to our healthcare workers. I'm glad you brought that up. And I just want to thank you again for highlighting all of the innovation here. It's really an amazing place, and this is a fantastic panel. I see who you have on it, and they're really basically the panel I would have picked. I'm also so proud to have Behring Pharmaceuticals and Bayer in the district with their U.S. operations centered in Parsippany and Whippany. Behring is funding some really interesting research into the impact of COVID on reproduction, pregnancy, and neonatal health. And so I'm excited to get the readout of the panel and where everybody is. So thank you so much. Thank you again for having me. This is just a wonderful focus area. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone on today.
Well, thanks again, Congresswoman. And as I said, thank you for your service. And we know you're busy. We appreciate the time you took today. So please all join me in thanking the Congresswoman. So great panel. So we'll move now to our panelists. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Stanzilis. Mike is the Vice President for Membership at the Morris County Chamber of Commerce. Mike is going to moderate our next panel. And as the Congresswoman said, we have some really great expert folks to speak today to some of these issues, and we so appreciate them taking their time from their busy schedules to join us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Great, thank you, Frank, and really great thanks to the Congresswoman for being here today. So we have an incredibly Morris County-centric panel today, so let's just get right to it. Dr. Rubinson, early on in this pandemic, northern New Jersey was one of the hardest hit areas of the country. Now, at that time, so much was still unknown about COVID-19, and clinical research played an integral role in the discovery of effective treatments. Can you tell us about Atlantic Health's COVID research program and how that helped to identify effective therapeutics for patients in northern New Jersey?
Thanks for the question, Mike. Taking a step back, in January, due to the both the scope as well as pace of the outbreak that was going on in China, Atlantic Health leadership under Mr. Granulotti, Amy Perry, and Dr. Jan Schwartzmiller clearly leaned forward to know that we needed to start preparing long before we had our first case. As we transitioned into February, we were all hungry for information. We were reading whatever was coming out of China. There was some reports coming out of Italy. And we had colleagues at the University of Washington and others in Seattle trying to give us early information on if we got patients, how would we be able to best care for them? Going from that kind of hunger for information, once we transitioned into March, we went from no patients to where at Morristown Medical Center alone, by the end of June, we had over 2,000 confirmed persons with COVID and over 1,000 inpatients. And in the Atlantic Health System, we had over 8,000 patients and nearly 3,000 inpatients. So some would say that we had more patients than a moderate-sized country just within our 5-hospital system. So we clearly developed a rapid knowledge base. To be able to work around clinical research and investigate the gaps and the opportunities, it was important that we heard from our bedside providers to identify what the key issues were. So I organized at Morristown the 20 COVID units where we had daily meetings with our physicians, RNs, pharmacists, and respiratory therapists to be able to identify what are we seeing with the patients, what are our key gaps, what are our opportunities, and then linking that together where we already had a very capable clinical research infrastructure, mostly around oncologic studies, but we have a broader clinical research infrastructure that wasn't doing as much because as COVID kind of refocused a lot of our functions, we repurposed that and really put together a Manhattan Project where our oncologists, together with our clinical research experts, together with our legal experts, and a multi-professional, multidisciplinary group, use the information coming from our bedside providers to work with industry to really work on what are our key issues that we need to start getting into the clinical realm immediately. And we had a number of industry partners and industry initiated protocols that we evaluated, some which we were able to actually go from conversation to actually into clinical trial with less than 10 days, which we know is a very, very rapid effort when you're actually caring for patients. We focused on immune modulating agents, expanded access to antivirals such as remdesivir. We participated with the Mayo convalescent plasma trial, and ultimately our strategy was not only to get access for our community members for novel therapeutics, but to do it in an infrastructure where there's clearly, it's not just the Wild West of just throwing novel therapeutics at it, but we're doing it within protocols. We're doing it with partners who have strong scientific infrastructure so that not only do we learn for our patients, but for the rest of the country and internationally so that we can start selecting better therapeutics.
Outstanding. Thank you, Doctor. So going over to Dr. Zampaglione, did I get that name correct?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Mike.
Excellent. So there's been a strong focus on the race to identify a vaccine for COVID-19, as this will be one of the critical mechanisms to placing our communities on the return to health and work once again. Now, yet Bayer has spoken about there are 3 routes to making a difference for coronavirus patients in the near and medium term. Can you tell us about those 3 routes, Doctor?
Surely, and thanks so much for hosting this and having us. This has been fantastic so far. So yeah, there are 3 routes. We've talked a lot about the vaccine. I mean, that's the one that most everybody is waiting for, but that's the route that's going to take the longest. You have to develop the vaccine. You have to put it through the rigorous clinical trials to show the safety and efficacy. And both safety and efficacy will take some time, also in all the different populations. But a second route is developing antibodies, antibodies that we would normally make against viruses or agents from the outside. Again, it takes time to develop them. You have to either synthetically develop them or try to get them from patients who have been exposed. But one of the more quickest routes is going to be just repurposing drugs that are already out there that are marketed. Now, of course, they're not going to be marketed for the indications that we're looking for with COVID, but the safety profile has been well established for the indication for those drugs that they're marketed with. And also they're already manufactured at a large scale. So it's really doing the study, generating the data to see, is there an effectiveness? But you're already getting a huge step ahead when you're looking at, well, the safety profile, you know how the product works. And the biggest thing is the manufacturing. I think that's one of the big concerns. We're making great strides in developing the vaccine, but it's the execution of giving it out. As the Congresswoman had said, thankfully BD has come in and is ramping up for syringes. You know, it's not just, hey, you've got a drug or vaccine and wow, everybody miraculously gets it. You have to get it into the public, into the manufacturing stream. So those are the 3 routes, and especially the repurposing one, we've been very proud at Bayer to be a part of that.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Doctor. And now we're going to go over to Lillian German. So Lillian, throughout the pandemic, there's been a concern that non-COVID related clinical research would be put on hold while the country worked to combat the coronavirus. As a small specialty biopharmaceutical company that focuses on reproductive health, women's medicine, and gastroenterology, can you talk a bit about how Ferring recognizes the importance of continued clinical research for these specialty areas, especially during this coronavirus? I think you may be muted.
Great question. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the chamber. Thank you to Morris County Chamber, and certainly thank you to Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill. So happy to be with you today. As a former Hill staffer, I know how busy she is, and so that was really great. I think she spent over 40 minutes with us. So hats off to her. I can still remember when members were working from home or trying to work from home in the aftermath of 9/11. They thought that was a big deal. This is taking it to a whole different level. But as you said, Ferring is a New Jersey-based research-driven organization. We have a 70-year history of research and innovation. And like many of our peers here today, we had to pause much of our clinical work due to the virus. This was very tough. It was a tough decision, especially in our therapeutic areas like infertility, where there is a window of opportunity for women to conceive. There is literally a clicking talk. So we knew that simultaneously, as we were being mandated to pause research, that we would redouble our efforts to prepare for the day when we could restart and welcome our patients back into our studies. We work closely with local, state, and federal authorities to determine when and how to quickly but safely restart our trials. We made sure we had the dedicated staff to not only restart, but to help with supporting what is actually proven to be an uptick in patients due to the pause. We worked with so many stakeholders to make sure we were ready to accommodate and remain very steadfast in our commitment to the patients and the underserved areas of women's health and reproductive medicine, where we're striving to be industry leaders. So thank you for that, and thank you for having us here today.
Great. Well, thank you. So back to you, Dr. Rubinson. The Chamber's Discover and Deliver map illustrates that there are a number of clinical trials underway at Morristown Medical Center as part of your COVID research program. When there are so many different therapeutics being tested to combat COVID-19, how do you choose which treatments seem promising enough to run a trial in your health network, Doctor?
Thanks again for that question as well, Mike. So we had to be very deliberate about how we approached the trials. So currently we have over 12 clinical trials that are open and enrolling for COVID-19. And we were strategic in terms of we first mapped the continuum of care from prevention, post-exposure prophylaxis, early treatment, inpatient treatment, severe treatment, and then post-convalescent treatment. And we put together a multi-professional, multidisciplinary group with a variety of different perspectives and expertise to address things such as need, shortfalls, are there any therapeutics already in that particular space? And then we would look at a specific trial of biologic plausibility. Did it look like there was really good prelim data to actually suggest that that therapeutic is really going to be an opportunity? We looked at company experience. So we partnered with a number of great industry partners, but there's a huge spectrum of experience of those folks being able to undertake a clinical trial. So we wanted to make sure that if we were going to engage with them, that we could really run this trial and do it safely and smartly. We also looked for partnership with protocols. Most of the companies that we worked with, given that we were out in front in managing so many patients, were really collaborative on some redesigns and retweaks of the protocols to ensure, again, that we were doing the best studies, both to make available access, but also to do it safely. And we put together, again, a wide breadth of a team with oncologic background, hematologic, infectious disease, pulmonary critical care, pediatrics, pharmacy, etc. And then just folks who are quite expert in running clinical trials. So that's how we kind of sorted through the myriad of different trials that were offered to our institution.
Great. Well, thank you for the detailed answer. So now we're going back over to Dr. Zampaglione. So, Doctor, the Congresswoman spoke about New Jersey's vibrant life sciences industry, which supports high-value jobs and underpins economic growth across this great state. However, companies like Bayer will only be able to continue to invest in R&D if effective protection for that investments are in place. So can you speak about the importance of intellectual property protection to Bayer's investment in clinical research, which will help to deliver treatments to patients, support job creation, and stimulate this New Jersey economy?
Yeah, Mike, you know, this is such an important topic for us and for the entire industry. It costs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a drug, develop a molecule from the bench all the way to get into a patient's hands, and to help with a cure, a treated disease, and what have you. And as most everybody knows, only a small percentage of drugs that start in the lab actually make it all the way for a variety of reasons. So it is so important that our industry does have some type of protection on this, that we do maintain the IP protection. So that way we can recoup what has been invested, but more importantly, take the money that is in profits and reinvest that into R&D. Look at what has happened over the last number of decades with all these new therapies, these incredible therapies, especially in the oncology field. Unfortunately, it's not cheap. It takes a lot. But the other part too, it's not just the drug company itself that, you know, dare I say, will reap some rewards from this. The infrastructure around. So when a product does get to the point that it gets approved and the company starts marketing, still there's tremendous amount of investment and time and effort that goes into it, and being able to educate healthcare professionals about it, and being able to educate the distribution system about it, really providing grants and further research. And even though a drug is developed and marketed, more research continues on it, following the safety profile. And even just when we talk about educating healthcare professionals, that's a whole nother industry that is employed and that is working towards, again, helping advance science and helping advance patient care. So tremendously important that that protection is there, so that truly we can continue to advance science and advance human life, and really be able to manage and handle these type of pandemics and these crises that come literally out of the blue. And just one quick thing I want to say about Morristown Memorial. Dr. Rubinson and I used to, back in the early 2000s, I was in practice and affiliated with the hospital, and my office and the emergency room were involved with the HPV vaccine trials way back with Glaxo. And truly what he has said, you know, for 20 years now, it's still the same. It's an incredible place, a great infrastructure for doing studies. And I'm so proud to have been part of that HPV. So really just, you've got a great panel of people here on this. So thanks again, Mike.
Absolutely. We are, I would concur, we're truly blessed to have Morristown Memorial Atlantic Health here. And in fact, a quick plug to them, our chairman of our board is their CEO, so Trish O'Keefe. So we're really blessed to have them in our community. So last question is going out to Lillian German. So I know your company has worked closely with the Congresswoman's office on a number of issues before, particularly pertaining to women's health. The Chamber recognizes that continued clinical research can only happen with the right legal and regulatory framework in place. Can you speak about the importance of public-private partnerships and why collaboration with local policymakers like Representative Sherrill is so important to innovative companies like yourself?
Sure. Thank you again, Mike, for that. Can I first say that we need Dr. Zampaglione out there doing what pharma can't do, which is explaining why drugs cost so much. As a former staffer, I can tell you, Dr. Zampaglione, we need you out there. We need you walking the halls every day.
I'd love to, Lillian. Thank you for
breaking
that.
this down. You did such a wonderful job.
Thank you
I mean,
so much for that.
I try to do that, but you just Yeah, so you should be leading pharma. So yeah, you know, another area, big area for a focus for Fairing is women's health and bringing innovation and needed access to citizens of New Jersey and across the country. The Congresswoman and her staff have always been extremely engaged on this issue, and our public-private partnership has really been vital to making a change in that area. For example, last year we helped shepherd passage of a law called named HR 13, the End Maternal Deaths Act. The purpose of that bill and law was to, you know, and it was started, it actually was initiated by a congressman back in 2011, but it wasn't until, you know, we won't take credit for it, but certainly Fairing sort of picked up the ball. And because we were looking at why so many women were dying and suffering diseases or illnesses during pregnancy. And here was that bill sort of languishing. And the Congresswoman's office worked with us to help pass that law. And it provides funding to study why this is happening. You know, there's just such a high rate of you know, death and morbidity, particularly among African-American women and other minority women. And so that was just key. This law is a great example of the power of public-private partnerships. And so we really look forward to working with the Congresswoman's office. And, you know, I think we can get some great things accomplished. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Lillian, and thanks to all our great panelists for being here today. We really appreciate the work that you are doing for our country and our communities. And so I'll hand this back to Meghan and Frank for their closing remarks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for moderating that panel discussion. Extraordinarily insightful. So I just want to thank all of you for being with us today, for sharing your insights. Thank you for those attending virtually with us and hearing about the tremendous work of this industry, in particular, Bayer, Fairing, Morristown Medical Center, Atlantic Health, and the collective efforts of the life science and healthcare industries. So thank you all. Morris County is proud to have you call us home, and we all wish you a safe and happy and relaxing weekend. So turning it to Frank.
Well, thank you, Meghan. And I'm going to take my moderator's prerogative for one moment and just invite our chairman, Ray Kerins, to say a closing word if he has any, and then we'll wrap up. Ray?
Thank you, Frank. Just to everybody who participated here today, fabulous panel. Obviously, the Congresswoman is very impressive, and we're very lucky to have her leading the 11th District of half New Jersey in the life science industry. To Meghan and to the entire chamber, absolutely well done. Continue these programs. These are very helpful to connecting not just the business community, but obviously the community as a whole. And you continue to look at these really important topics that people want to know more about. It's very helpful, and we're very greatly appreciated. And finally, Frank, to you and both the Gypsy team and the Chamber team, continue what you guys are doing. It's a great way to bring like-minded groups together to work together to find solutions to some of the challenging issues that are facing our country. And for that, I tip my hat to all of you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ray. And just very briefly, I want to thank Meghan again, her entire team. Mike, thanks for doing a great job leading a terrific panel. That was a fascinating discussion, and we really appreciate the insights and the expert perspective from all our panelists. So thank you all for making time at the start of a busy holiday weekend. We wish everyone nothing but the happiest holiday and safest holiday as we all celebrate Labor Day. Again, this was a terrific event. Wouldn't have been possible without our partners at the Morris County Chamber, and certainly the participation of the Congresswoman and our great speakers. We appreciate the time you all took to join us from the start of the holiday weekend. That you might be driving somewhere otherwise, and we hope you get on the road safely. But please remember, we're going to have to work together to get through this, and we appreciate your support for members of Congress and great policymakers, and it's important that you bring your perspectives, as Lillian said, to the halls of Congress and share the business community's priorities with our policymakers and leaders. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, happy Labor Day, stay safe, and we so appreciate you taking time to be with us today. Take care.